in the submission form. And also the farmer can actually be very consistent in all the samples they take to mix for the composite sample. I would say that we analyze what you send us. Mhm.
Okay. Well, that's all you can do. Maybe going a little more in depth, no pun intended there, but as far as like for hay and pasture, how deep we should take those samples compared to vegetable gardens, compared to your lawn, or maybe even in a high tunnel
Okay,
for
so
sampling depth.
yeah, so that's a good question. Let's see if I don't miss any part. So it's very interesting that related to the recommended soil depth, we are assuming things, but when you look at the literature, there's very, very little written. Scientifically, they will say support a depth over the other. So I'm doing my own little research, and I would say that definitely most of the nutrients in pasture, and because you're applying pasture and hay, the fertilizer at the surface, okay? So the surface soil will tell you mostly what you will need, or what you can, or what the soil can supply. I would say that in pastures, I would go between 0 and 2 inches. If they go 4, it's okay, but the very surface. Now, if the people take the soil sample, just the first thing they need to do is really kind of clean the soil, so they're really taking soil and not a bunch of roots. So because we're talking about just 2 inches, so it needs to be soil. That I would say that for that type of crop, I would go shallow. In high tunnel, I would go the depth of the tillage, because that is where the people are going to be mixing their fertilizer with the soil, and generally is between 0 and 6. Some people have 0 and 8. So I would say that depending on the tillage they are performing, that is the depth that they should sample and send us to us. I would always recommend just write down how deep, so nobody forgets about it. We have it in our archive, and the farmer will have it in the report. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that of course it's in a couple of the fact sheets that are available either on the WVU extension website or on your soil lab website. But we get a lot of questions about that, and I think that maybe sometimes a bit when we do sample pastures or even gardens and stuff, that we sample a little bit too deep. But will that make that much of a difference if they go 5-6 inches deep instead of just going 2 to 3 inches?
If you think about, okay, if the soil is very well mixed, and the 0 to 2 will represent the whole mixture, I would say. Now, if you are working with known tillage, or you're working with the pastures, you have a phenomena that's called stratification, that if you are going to sample deeper, the concentration of the nutrient is going to be kind of diluted, because most of it is going to be at the surface. So if you then deeper you sample, then less nutrients you're going to be seeing in your results compared to what really is at the surface. So that phenomenon of stratification actually happens very much in grasslands and definitely in known tillage. But if you till, actually you're mixing everything up.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about I was looking on your bio online, some of the classes that you teach there at the Davis College.
Oh yeah, I definitely like the classes that I teach. I teach what I call 3 classes, and one is very fun. It's called Soil in the City. Oh. So the students really love it. I really love it too. It's kind of introductory course, but talks about soils in cities that are really different to what you see in a regular soil in a farm. The city soils, or soils in the city, also include the gardens that are in. So that class is really, really fun. The students really like it. Then I go to the capstone course. That's a more serious course. So in that one, again, it's called Environmental Soil Sciences, environmental soil management. So in that one, the students need to deal with all the aspects of soil, avoiding degradation. And it's serious. The students actually are just a senior class, so they are taking it also as they should. I also prepare that in such a way that they can use it when they go to work. For example, they work for NRCS or consulting companies. That class is actually geared towards that. And then I have one course more, and that is soil physics, and that I kind of smile about because it's a really good class. It has a laboratory, and when you have hands-on, students love it. The one that's not there, that is being now prepared, I'm preparing it or designing it, is as an introduction to soil health. That's going to be a new course.
Oh, cool. And that's kind of the over the last decade, probably the soil health, all the microbes that are in the soil that make it alive. That's the big thing. This what's going on in the there in the soils as far as the soil health. That's a big thing. That's good. When do you start teaching that class?
It will be, I believe, next year. But one thing that I say about soil health is I have been doing research in soil health that before was called soil quality for over 15 years already. And I have a paper just published last year that says soil health is not only soil biology. And I said, how can I explain that? How can I transfer that knowledge to people? And I found a way. So the soil is healthy, like we're healthy because our circulatory system works. So it doesn't matter how healthy your guts are. If you have a blockage in the arterial veins, you know what's happening. So if you don't have the circulatory system working, you're not going to survive. The same with the soil. So the soil as a whole, it needs to be looked at the house of the microbes, but the microbes themselves are not the ones who create the health. So it's much more. That's why I say it's much more than the microbial community. The soil health is the house that keeps them. But if the house is not well built, you will have nothing.
Yeah, Eugenia, we were talking about I think on one of the programs about antibiotics. There's a new rule coming on for antibiotics that are available to livestock, but in that soil health realm, what's the I think maybe it's in the future, one of the big things are these um, different bacteria or rhizomes or different things that we're using for seed coatings and adding when we spread fertilizer and so forth. Is that you think that's one of the big things coming on the horizon for as far as soil health and crops?
Well, there are two things. The use of some type of additives, kind of trying to create a super bug to help, I would call nutrient cycling, which is in pasture, for example, very important, and it's related to soil health. That has been kind of in the market for a while. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the soil itself has their own populations of inhabitants. And almost all the papers that I have read in that aspect, the general population actually will be spiked or changed for a little bit, but it goes back to what it was. So at this point, unless they really create a superbug, they really genetically change that strain, bacteria, fungi, whatever it is. And I don't know if that could cause something. I would be very, 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 very careful thinking about using a superbug that comes from a lab that is artificially kind of created. Yeah. And in the part of in the grasslands, the nutrient cycling is very important. But again, if you go ahead and degrade the soil with compaction or erosion, doesn't matter how good those microbes are, they will not work.
Sure. Maybe a little bit with that same subject. Do you think that I know for modern agriculture that we're using a lot of chemicals, Roundup, we use a lot of other sprays, of course, help us control weeds. Do you think that those they claim that they degrade rather quickly in the soil, but what's your opinion on that? And do you think that we'll slowly move away from those?
So and here I can talk up from my own experience. And in my thesis in soil chemistry, I actually work with some pesticides. And the problem with the pest and starting with what they say, they decompose fast in the environment. They actually do if you use it the right way. So they are food. The microbes look at some of those components of those pesticides as food. However, if you overpower them, then you're going to start to have some problems. But if you use it, like they call it, environmentally, following the instructions, the microbes in the soil should be able to use it even for food, because that is what I actually even found in my thesis. Okay, so are we going to go away? Well, believe it or not, I don't think it's so much because of the effect on soils. It's going to be because of the resistance some of those chemicals are producing in the plants. So you start to use herbicides that is not killing the weeds. Why? It's not killing the weeds because the weeds became resistant. So I would say that not so much because of the soil health, it's going to be more because of they're going to become ineffective, not effective to do what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Sure. A little bit, I know one of the questions I sent you is about maybe explain a little bit to the audience about the Melic 3, how you pronounce that, of
Yep.
of how the samples are run, how that works, and then why that we choose that method to run the samples.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. So the first thing I would tell the audience, and for those that do not know, is all the nutrients that we extract to give the recommendations need to be taken from the soil with some type of what they call extractant. So we extract. The extractant is a liquid chemical that is a mixture of several components that will be mixed with the soil, and then it's going to be filtered, and that liquid is going to be analyzed in one of the instruments we have. So Melic 3 is one of those liquid or those extractants, and it's actually what we call an acid extractant. So in other words, we actually mix it with the soil, has an acid composition, and we'll actually pull out some of the nutrients that the plant takes. The name of the amount of nutrients that are being extracted is called bioavailable, because the interesting thing about Melic 3 is that it's mimicking what the plant actually does, that it makes the surrounding of the roots more acid to be able actually to take those nutrients. So that is Melic 3, is an acid extractant that will be mixed with the soil after the soil has been prepared, of course, and then filtered and then analyzed with one of the instruments that we have. So they are actually, you can imagine, well, why Melic 3? I think that was the other question, and not another one. Yet there are several extractants. The most common was Melic 1 that we used in the lab till 2018, end of 18. And there are others like Bray. And the difference between those extractants is that they're not as acid, or they're not as recommended for soils, acid soils like the one in West Virginia. Melic 1 was fine. We didn't have any problem between Melic 1 and Melic 3, because like you see, they come from the same person, the same type of logic was placed in the creation of those two extractants. Melic 1 is a little bit less acid, so that means that you could use it also in soils that were not as acid as the one that we have here. Now, why Melic 3 again? So number one, because it fits very well the soils that we have in West Virginia. And number two, it's because it's starting to become kind of an universal extractant. So almost all the labs that I work in the South Central and the Northeast, all of them are using, well, almost all of them are using Melic 3. So we are actually working in projects to see if we can make similar recommendations. That would be great, because I mean, we can work between states and collaborate to actually make our tests much better.
Yeah, Brandy, you still with us? Just looking for if we had any questions here from the
I'm
audience.
sorry. Yeah, I'll look and
Okay.
see if we got any questions.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen any questions.
Okay.
Just everybody saying hello. And
Hey, JJ.
Yeah, Davey.
Hey, there's a real good link that Ronnie had sent me here. Sometimes we have problems finding the, and that's what I've been working on. Y'all see me up and down. I'm actually looking for a soil test report. And I don't know, there's not a lot of county agents on here, but I don't know if everybody has that link as far as how you can look up a soil test within the past couple years. I just found one from 2022 that a guy was looking for. I could send that to Brandy or you, and y'all could put it in the chat. I don't know how to do that. So,
well, and we can share it in the email to the county agents. That's kind of neat. We keep an internal listing of the.
But Brandy, what happens is after you can go back exactly 12 months to the date. After that, you cannot find them unless you have this link.
Oh, well, absolutely. I'd love to have that. I didn't know.
Yeah, send that to Brandy and she'll.
Are you available at email now, or are you on the road, Brandy?
Oh, I can't really put it in the chat at the moment, but I will get it out on our Facebook page. So
All right.
just send it to me via email.
What they've got to do, they've got to set up an account. Like, I labeled mine Raleigh Soil. So I can look up anybody's in the state. So I just sent it to you.
Cool.
And
thanks, Davey boy.
Ronnie walked me through this here about a month ago, and it's been very helpful. In fact, I was using it while y'all were talking just now, looking for a soil test out of Summers County.
Yeah. Eugenie, sometimes I have questions or maybe issues. Some of my producers will tell me about private labs that they think are better or they can get more results or improved results from a private lab. But are you saying that most of the private labs use the Melic 3 as well? They're using basically the same system to run all the samples?
Well, if you're working with one of the big private labs, you actually can request them what extractant you want. Okay. So they are running around 100K or 200K samples. Of course, it goes also with the cost. They have the same cost. And about the quality, I'm not sure. In some cases, I can tell you some, but I will not say it on the air that how the ones that I would even use. But they need to be certified, and we are certified. So in other words, all the certified labs will give you the same quality of results. So if somebody thinks that because it's a private lab is better than WVU, I would say we're certified. That means that the quality of our results is the same as any other certified lab in the United States. So, okay. But they give a cost, and they add in that cost several of the analysis that we have out of pocket. But well, we need to pay for those out of pockets, and they're paying quite a bit more because the routine analysis we have it free, and they need to pay for it.
Right. Another question I get a lot is the phosphorus saturation. A lot of people don't understand that. Maybe if you could explain that, how that test relates to your phosphorus. Okay.
So that's a really good question. So making the long story short, the phosphorus is one of the elements that can be considered a pollutant. And the phosphorus, although it's very strongly retained in the soil, it's very strongly retained in the soil if the soil can retain it. So, but imagine that's kind of a bucket that's getting full and full and full and full, and it gets to a point that it has excess phosphorus. So that means that if you have erosion, or in some cases, just water-soluble phosphorus will be moving to rivers and create the pollution. The phosphorus saturation index that the people are seeing in the report is related more with the power or the risk of pollution of their land. So, and it will be very high if the phosphorus is high, if the phosphorus capacity of the soil to retain, so if the capacity of the soil to retain the phosphorus is getting lower and lower and lower, then higher the risk. So it's related to the amount of phosphorus and the other elements, for example, aluminum and iron, that will actually contribute to holding the phosphorus.
At what
So
level do we
Mhm.
need to start worrying if it's above like 20%, or how do we
So
relate that to our citizens?
that's a very good question too. So in the soil testing, what we have is we have a limit, and it's relatively low. I mean, it's just a 20%, like you said, we are getting into the higher risk. Who needs to be worried about that? If you have a garden, and in the garden or on your yard, it appears to be saturated, the only thing that you need to look at is that don't apply more phosphorus, you have enough, okay? But if you are, for example, having a big field closer to a river or any type of waterways, you would say, okay, my soil is in the point that is risky. If I add even more phosphorus, that phosphorus will become a pollutant. So that's just an indicator, okay? So it's so you know where you are in the environmental area, okay?
Yeah, I think one of the other questions that I sent, I know that the soil series, maybe some of I know a lot of my gardeners, they don't really know what their soil series is. We can look that up pretty quick, but how important is that as far as making your fertilizer and lime recommendations?
If you have as a selected crop code any of the pastures or hay, the soil series has been used to actually adapt the recommendations based on the yield goal per soil series. So in that case, if you have the soil series, you're going to have a soil recommendation for fertilizers is going to be a little bit more specific. Okay. Related to gardens, the fact that we are manipulating so much our soil there, I would say that we should not worry that much, because definitely we are working just with the surface and we are manipulating it so much that it will lose some of the characteristics of the soil series. Also, the gardens are so small that the soil series varies so much that maybe we are in those little pieces that will not be exactly what is described, and we're not using that to fine tune, if I call it like that, the recommendation for a garden. So I would say that people that work with gardens, don't worry so much. People that have grasslands or hay and would like to fine tune the recommendations, just look at it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think in one of the other questions that I sent you do you have any stories for us as far as maybe some questions that you had from the public, or some of the samples that you got sent in that were for maybe some type of exotic crop that you hadn't heard, that was not native to West Virginia, or no, you hadn't seen people grow before?
Wow, it seems that you are sitting in my office. So I cannot forget the most exotic crop, and I tried to figure out if I was understanding the question well, and it was written, so I should have. It's recommendations for sugarcane. So I said sugarcane.
We grow sugarcane in West Virginia?
In West Virginia, yeah. So when I saw that, I said, and it seems that there must have been a misunderstanding from part of the landowner, because they said, we have used it. I said, I asked the landowner, please send me a picture, because that would be so interesting to see sugarcane in West Virginia. And I mean it. If they have done it, well, that would be amazing. The reason I'm not saying it's impossible is because, have you heard about taro? Taro, T-A-R-O. It's a root.
Okay.
So that is a tropical crop that I know one of the researchers here at the university have actually produced. So we can produce taro in West Virginia. So that's why I asked for a picture, because what if this person was able to produce sugarcane in West Virginia? I don't know, but that was one of the weirdest, most exotic crops that I have seen that are asking us for recommendations. So I said, no, I'm sorry, we don't have any for sugarcane.
What, Eugenia, what are most of the questions that you get from the public there at the soil lab? Are they more lawn garden related, or more with farmers with hay, pasture, and crops?
So I think that you guys, the extension agents, are doing a pretty good job in related with the grasslands. I don't receive too many of those questions. I would too when I received some questions, but I received questions from the gardeners, and there are things that what I say is that I would recommend you to contact your county agent, because I need to see what you're describing. So there are things that I definitely would, without seeing, I cannot not say anything about it. So maybe some of the questions you're receiving is because I actually recommended them to call you guys. But I would say the most common questions are, how do I send the sample to you, and the address. So the ones that I received the most. Oh, and where are my results? I have not. I sent my sample 2 weeks ago. I have not received my results. And I said, okay. I immediately check. And one of the main problems is that our reports go to junk mail. So then people say, I have not received it. And then I said, but okay, it says in our system, we did send them. It did not bounce back. So we sent it like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. And it's because I would recommend that some of that everybody checks the junk mail around 5 to 10 working days after the sample. They calculate the sample arrived, because it may be in the junk mail.
Okay, that's good advice. I think the turnaround time has really improved a lot. I think so, but over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, you think that's true? I know that in a few 2 to 3 weeks, you usually get your samples back.
Yeah, so I can remember when at the beginning of the podcast that I made the comment when I received the lab. I had the very short time to train. Well, one of the things that I can tell you I needed to do is I trained with at least 2-month-old reports that were not sent. So that means that the stories that I heard before I became the director of the samples not being returned to the farmers in 2 or 3 months, I must admit they were true based on what I saw when I came in. And that was one of my first objectives to solve that needed to stop. So it took a little bit of time, but I think that I can say with confidence 5 to 10 working days. So if the people don't receive if the landowner cannot see the reports in their email, just check the junk mail, because that's the time we have been honoring at this point. The 2 times I remember in the whole time, and since I'm the director, that we were not able to honor that completely, and we went to 3 to 15 working days, was when we had issues with the instrument, so that the instrument was really down. So, or some of the instruments in the lab, and that really delays things, but not more than, it never has been delayed more than 15 working days. So, and that was rare. So I always recommend check the junk mail.
Okay. Another question I have is about I guess that I'm kind of old school for the lawn and garden. I liked it when it was pounds per 1,000 square feet, but now some of the recommendations are, is it ounces per 100 square feet? Is that right for the gardens?
Yeah.
Why did they switch that up?
Well, okay. So It was before I became the director. So it was, if you look at almost all the other labs, when I saw the pounds per 100 square feet, I didn't flinch because it's fine. That's what all the other labs use. Okay, I mean, all the ones that I use. But there was a short time in which they were using 1,000, and that I said, no, that's not, I have never seen that any other lab gives 1,000, but that was corrected to 100. So it's because it's what everybody uses, and maybe, I don't know, it's easier, but I like the pounds instead of the ounces. Yeah, I like more weight. I think we changed it. I think we changed it to pounds per square feet. Now you have it in weight again.
Yeah, and what I guess as far as the gardens, I know that I always get a lot of questions with those. What I find a lot of people tend to over fertilize on the gardens. Do you tend to find that in most of the samples, or a lot of them?
Absolutely. So it's I would say I have a little bit of the analysis. I don't have it here, but I would say that if I find any land use that has been over fertilized, it's going to be the gardens. And in that case, I mean, there's going to be zero recommendation of nothing. However, remember, always nitrogen. Our crops always will need nitrogen. So maybe you have everything, phosphorus, potassium, everything in excess, but you should not forget your nitrogen. So, but don't apply anything else. I call it scavenge what you have there. You're going to save money and time.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about how long you've been doing the organic matter and the trace minerals. Do you get a lot of requests for that, and how can that information benefit our farmers and gardeners and homeowners?
Oh, thank you. That's a very, very good question too. So the organic matter it's a very important indicator of how your soil is. However, you don't see recommendations of adding organic matter because of exactly a percentage that you have in your soil. I would say that it's just to know the status. If you have less than 1%, you have problems. If you have more than 2%, don't forget about it. You're fine. So that if I need to give a recommendation, is I look at it. Okay, you have more than 2%. Don't worry, you're good. Okay. So if you have less than 1%, okay, I ask the question, are you working with soils? Why it's 1%? I would say that's organic matter. So I recommend it. Basically, believe it or not, I would tell the farmer, use it as a measure of what is changing, and do it every 2-3 years. Just repeat it to see if you're okay. So it's like, where am I in my own land, and how am I doing with the organic matter? Because that will give you also, like you said, something about the biology. So then relate to the trace minerals, that is a relatively new test. I think it has been running over 1.5 years already. What to do with that information? That's a very good question, because when you get the elements in the soils, you will say, what do I do with the iron, okay, or the copper? Basically, they are not, in West Virginia, we do not have recommendations for fertilization of trace mineral or micronutrients, like they're also called, related to different crops. So I would say that in the United States, in the whole United States, it's rare to find any lab that will give recommendation based on the soils. They do it more related with the foliar tissue analysis. However, you can definitely see and recommend, and I'm sure you guys are very well trained on this, of the nutrient deficiency due to trace elements like copper or iron. You will see them. They are easy to see. So, and the application is actually most of the time even foliar. What do I recommend about them? And we're starting to have more and more requests of those, is that the same as organic matter, use it to know where you are. Because if you start to have increase in trace minerals or micronutrients in your soil, is that you're adding something that has those metals. So, and even though we will say, oh, you're good or high or low, we cannot even say exactly what's high or low. I would say put an eye on it, because maybe you are actually adding something that you shouldn't. And one thing, losing money, and maybe environmentally you have a problem.
Eugenia, back to the organic matter, what are there some benchmarks to say that like 3 to 4%, above 5, or are there some percentages that you can say, wow, that you've got some really high organic matter soil there? Or are there some things that say, wow, are you in northern Ohio in some muck soils when you get up towards 10%? Or what are some benchmarks you can give the audience?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. This is not written because, like I said, this may change quite a bit. But I have analyzed some soils that present as much as 20% of organic matter. Yeah, when I see that, I say, okay, this is not soil. So I go back and look at the sample, and it definitely seems that be one of those potting material mixed with some soil. But that material is, I mean, starting with, it may be organic matter, but is it the useful organic matter, if I can call it like that? So I would say that if you are managing the soil and you send a sample to the lab and it has 20%, you may have a soil that doesn't even have the strength to hold plants. And maybe the plants are actually lodging or something like that, if it's a garden, for example. Unless they're sending us potting material, okay, mixed with a little bit of soil. I would say that soils I have seen as much as high 10%. I would say that 10% is already in the high, and I will kind of question, is this real organic matter, or did they send me something else that was not soil? If you're thinking about mock soil, if you are in one of those soils that are just pure organic matter, it's 40%. So we don't have those in West Virginia, but in very, very, very small places. So naturally, yes, we could have those, but most of the ones that I'm talking about extremely high are garden soils. So I would say that less than 1%, definitely issues. I have seen that those are related with, for example, pipelines, when they actually put the pipeline back. So what they do is what they're sending me is subsoil. So it's not even the surface one. So that is 1%. Okay, so you need to do something about it. 2% and up, you're fine. To 4 to 5, I would say that is the regular one. Pastures have that very much so, and gardens too. So I would say that when you go over 10, 20, I would say it's not healthy, if I can talk about soil health. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I had another question about the. Do you think that a lot of people have issues understanding their I know that I get a lot of calls, but understanding their soil results? Do you think that there's anything that we could that we can change to maybe make it easier for the people that are reading them?
That's another very good question. And maybe because I'm working so much with soil health, I'm thinking about when the doctor gives you a recipe for the pharmacy. So they don't tell you really, I mean, oh, your sugar is high or whatever. And then you go and have a recipe, okay? So I see that recommendations as a recipe. So if the person, and I know that landowners, and I love this characteristic of a landowner, they love to understand everything. So I would say that the first part of the report, that is the composition and the bioavailable nutrients, I mean, I would say what the farmer or landowner needs to understand is, okay, I have an amount, and next to it is kind of a categorization, the categories that we have is high, very high, low. So that part would be, okay, I'm here is like reading a blood test, and I'm high or not, okay? If I'm high, I'm fine. Maybe I'm too fine if I get enriched with the soil. You don't need to do anything. If you are in the low part, yes, there is you need to do something about it. And then comes the remedy. Underneath is the recommendation. And then they're going to see that, okay, you will have maybe medium magnesium, or no, let's put better potassium, more important. If you have medium potassium in the lower part, when you see the remedy, you're going to see an amount of fertilizer recommended. So I would say that if the farmer wants to know more than that, I mean, they can definitely ask the questions, but they can look at it as, yeah, this, I went to the doctor and the doctor told me to take this. One of the things that I know may be confusing sometimes is, okay, what do I do with to fulfill? I would say that that's the word, to fulfill what they're asking me to add to the soil. And then is when maybe the question comes, how do I do that? And I know that we have it in the extension web pages. There are some of these apps that are, I mean, all over the internet, and many labs have them. So we don't need to create another one. There are 2 recommended. That what you do is you put there your soil test and sorry, your soil recommendation. And then it tells you even which is the blend of possible fertilizers you can use. Maybe that is the part that would even confuse me if I wouldn't know that. So is how to fulfill the recommendation that the soil testing lab, the doctor gave me to do. Okay. So I would say that that's the part that would be a little bit more confusing, and maybe help there. Or even you can say, okay, look at this app and play with the app and see what you can do, because many times the fertilizer that you need, the 10-10, may not cover everything or cover too much of something. And when you add it, you are putting extra something more. So that would be the part that I would say the landowner needs more help.
Hey,
And I know
Eugenia,
that you guys have provided it. Mhm.
we are running out of time, so I need to ask you every guest on the program. My dad said there's 2 types of music, country and Western. Are you a country music fan? And if you are, who's your favorite artist? Or do you like
Whoa.
another genre?
You know, I like country music. I don't have a favorite artist, but I do like some songs. Okay. Well, okay, let's see. I will sound here a little bit too traditional. John Denver. I really like him. Okay.
John Denver. Okay.
Yeah, I do. And there are some new groups. I don't remember the names of them, but I have them here. I listen to them all the time.
Okay.
But I will
Great.
need to look for them. But
We'll take
I do
John
like
Denver.
the new country.
Okay. Again, we appreciate Eugenia, you coming on the program. We'd like to have you on again in the future. A lot of good information. I know that soil testing is kind of one of our flagships for agriculture agents here at WVU. Again, also, I wanted to remind everyone that next week, Friday, May 12th, we have Anthony Pappas from the Heritage Habitat and Forestry. He's going to be talking about understanding carbon credits for landowners. May 19th, we're having Ed Schmolder talking about using FAMACHA as a management tool for small ruminants. And then the last Friday in May, we have Denise Kuhn from the New Mexico State Extension talking about all things chili pepper. She helps out with the New Mexico State Chili Pepper Institute. So we have a good lineup here for coming up the whole month of May. Exciting. Brandy, did we have any more questions of the audience before we sign off? Okay.
No, I don't see it. I don't see any in the chat there, JJ. Only thing I got is a lot of thank yous, and we appreciate Eugenia. She did a great job talking about soil testing, and
Oh yeah, great. Yes, Eugenia, thank you very much for coming on the program. Dr. Eugenia Pena with the director of the WVU Soil Lab. Thank you,
for having me. Thank you for having me. It was really great.
Good. We'd love to have you back on, and maybe we can pull Tom Basden from retirement and get on here. He always loves talking about the Soil Lab, and Dr. Rayburn.
Well, so, Rayburn, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get everybody in there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And like I said, we'll be talking with Anthony Pappas next week about carbon credits. So join us. Thank you very much, and everyone enjoy their weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Bye, Eugenia. Thank you.
Okay, you stopping us now, Randy?
Yeah, I'm going to try to figure out how to stop recording this thing. I had
Okay.
to put it on YouTube and transfer. I'm going to transfer it over.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. Stop. I put it live streaming on YouTube, and then I'll transfer it over later. So,
Yeah, that was
yeah,
that
she
was
did
good
great.
that they that Davy boy was talking about that link you can get to look up the old samples.
Yeah, that helped, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, heck yeah.
I liked having David on there too. I haven't
Good old
talked to him
Davy boy.
forever. Yeah.
Okay, well, where are you guys at? Near the turnpike yet?
We're in the Charleston now. We're getting in the lower
Okay.
part. Yeah. Coming down to Colorado. Yeah.
You didn't stop at the Tamarack? Brandy, you didn't stop at Tamarack? All right. Well, I'm gonna head out. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Did you hear that? It takes too much money to even breeze through Tamarack, let alone actually stop there.
Oh, you didn't get a bottle of wine or something?
No, not today.